Welcome to the first in a series of 3 wellbeing webcasts, which we've developed in partnership with the IGD. My name is Deborah Hume, founder of Minerva Engagement, and in this session, we'll be exploring and sharing insights into achieving greater personal wellbeing and resilience by focusing on caring for the whole self. For those of you who don't know us already, at Minerva Engagement, we support people and business in times of change to promote well-being and performance. And at the moment, as I'm sure many of you do know, we are going through a very high level of change. In fact, you could say that we're experiencing one of those black swan events whereby it's come out of nowhere. And if we think back to November, December time, nobody could have foreseen what was going to happen. So whilst we're quite used to change in our working environments, I don't think we're used to the amount of change that we're currently experiencing and the impact that that's having, not just in our working lives, but also in our personal lives, our social lives, and our friendship groups. It's actually creating quite a lot of worry and anxiety. And as we do go into those anxious states, we can respond to it in different ways. And some of us will respond to it by worrying. And the more we worry, the more we develop a habit of worrying, because our brains operate like prediction machines. So as we worry, it's like a form of mental rehearsal. It's similar to visualization, but in more of a negative way. So it's useful sometimes to notice the thoughts that we're having and, where possible, to try and distract ourselves away from some of the anxiety that we might be feeling. Others may respond in a different way. We may seek reassurance all the time. So we'll ask the same questions over and over again. Am I okay? Am I okay? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Or we will reread the same email many, many times. Others seek data. It's one of the things that I tend to do. If I'm nervous or if I'm anxious, I will go seeking out additional information. And when a lot of the information is quite negative, as it is at the moment, we can actually get very overwhelmed. I've actually tried to take myself away from the news feeds because the continual negative drumbeat was actually having an impact on my own mental health. The other issue or challenge with seeking data that we should be aware of is that because of the unconscious bias that we're all susceptible to, we tend to go seeking data that supports the beliefs we already have. So if we have a belief that things are looking really not very well and not very helpful for our working careers, or if we are thinking that everything is going to be awful and there's going to be no jobs for anybody, then we will tend to go looking for information that supports that view, which can actually increase our levels of anxiety and worry. And the final way that we may deal with it is to go into a state of hypervigilance. And this is where we start to be very sensitive to everything that is going on around us. And we tend to see, because we seek out more threat than reward type activities, we tend to see everything around us as a threat, which again can increase our anxiety levels. So we are in a period of change, and dependent on how we react to that change, we will be taking on different ways of being, whether that be worrying or seeking reassurance or data, or actually taking on a state of hypervigilance. I think for me, it doesn't really matter which one suits us or fits us. It's just being aware that when we are doing that, it is a sign that we are actually operating from quite an anxious place, which means that our emotions will be quite close to the surface. What that does is it puts us into a state of overwhelm. And I have noticed, particularly around now, people are feeling very overwhelmed, and that manifests in different ways. It might be that it gets to 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we feel incredibly tired, more so than we have done in the past. It might be, and I've heard this on a number of occasions, that we're having very fitful sleep, or even nightmares actually. Or it might be that we're just suddenly very distracted and we can't focus our attention on anything. I think What I'm inviting you to consider and reflect on, and if you want to pause the video at the moment to do that, please feel free, but just have a think about how you're feeling right now and how that might be manifesting itself in your lives, and therefore what your stress boundary may or may not be. And if we are pushing up against that boundary, and we all have different boundaries, then there are things that we should be thinking about and things that we can be putting in place to make sure that we look after ourselves well. And I think this is really important because there's an awful lot of people around at the moment who are going through quite difficult times. As somebody explained to me a couple of days ago, which I really thought was a nice analogy actually, we are all in the middle of a storm, but we're all in different boats. So how we are experiencing that storm will vary dependent on the boat that we're actually in. And what that means is that if we're going to be able to come through it well, we do need to take some time to look after ourselves. And sometimes that goes against our culture because we always feel that we should look after others first, but we're not much help to others if we're very emotionally wrung out, if we are very anxious ourselves and can't think straight. So some of the ways that we can look after ourselves are quite straightforward, and we do know them, we just sometimes forget to put them into practice. So making sure that we do get some exercise. As we move, we don't need to run all the time, but as we move, even if we just go for a walk, we actually start to move blood and energy around the body, which lifts the mood. Making sure that we eat well is also another good way of doing it. You know, what we put in our stomachs massively impacts how we feel. A lot of the neurotransmitters that are in the brain actually exist in the stomach. A lot of the chemicals that we associate with brain function are actually in the stomach, which is why sometimes the stomach is referred to as our second brain. So 50% of dopamine is found in the stomach, and dopamine is the chemical that actually helps us feel pleasure. 90% of serotonin is manufactured and produced in the stomach, and that has a huge impact on our mood and our memory and also our sleep. So considering that we put food and drink into our stomach at least 3 times a day and possibly more, what we actually do eat does matter. I think the other area is sleep. You know, sleep deprivation is not good, and our productivity and our performance drops off drastically when we are sleep deprived. So actually being very proactive and thinking about sleep and making sure we're getting enough sleep and we've got the right situation around us, the right temperature in the room, the windows shut so that it's dark, not looking at the blue light on our laptops half an hour before bed because it pings our brain back into action. All of those things help. And the more we can look after ourselves, the more we can keep ourselves calm, the more we can manage ourselves through this and other other change situations. The second area that we can look at is our own thoughts. Most of us do not pay much attention to what's going on in our mind and the thoughts that we're having day to day. And it's interesting because actually it's our thoughts that direct our emotions, that direct our feelings, that ultimately direct our behavior. So if we're feeling very low and out of sorts, it's helpful to pay attention to the thoughts that we're actually having. And if we are having, and we notice that we're in a cycle of negative thinking, which is very easy to get into when there's a lot of change coming at us from all different directions, then we can consciously change our thoughts. It's not easy and it takes practice, but the more we do it and the more we say to ourselves, just stop. It's okay. I'm okay right now. Tomorrow will be okay. The more we can do that, the more we can actually induce more positive feelings and help us through on a day-to-day basis. And the final thing I think that's worth keeping in mind is the importance of staying connected. And whilst I know some of us are going into work as key workers, others are at home, but there has been quite a lot of pressure on whether we can see family and when we can see friends. And luckily we do have technology available now that enables us to communicate over Zoom if we can't see each other face to face, but we shouldn't underestimate the importance of maintaining social connection. The more supported we feel, the more we can talk to friends and family, the more we can feel safe in our environments, the happier we are. And actually, the more we do liaise, even if it is through Zoom with our friends, it actually reduces cortisol production, which reduces feelings of anxiety and feelings of stress. So there are some simple things that we can keep in mind that actually help us put ourselves, if you like, in a stronger position to manage any change that is happening around us. So I hope you have found that helpful, and I hope you've enjoyed the webcast. There is a Healthy Habits handout available, which you can download from the IGD website. You can also download the other 2 webcasts in this series. And if you would like more information about our Minerva online training programs, then please do visit the Minerva Engagement website. Thank you very much.